Hi everyone, this is a short tutorial video on how to get started with C# and modding Total Miner. I apologise if there's any crackle in the audio. I don't know how to get rid of it. But here we go. So this is how to create a mod from Total Miner from absolute scratch using C#. So the first thing you'll do is you open Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio 2010. You can do it with the latest version, but that might require some extra steps. So I'm just going to use the simple version first. You can use Windows 10 Visual Studio version 2010 Express, which is the free version. It works pretty much the same. So the first thing you do is you click on New Project, or you can go File, New Project, and you need to have XNA Game Studio 4.0 installed on your computer, and if you do, you'll see under the Visual C# templates there's an XNA Game Studio 4, so you highlight that, and then you pick, I don't know why I've got two of these, but you pick Windows Game Library, and then you give it a name, so my test mod, and then you select a folder. I'm just going to put it in here. You usually tick that on, so under here it will create another folder called my test mod, and everything will go in there. And you just click OK. It will start off and it will give you a class1.cs file. There'll be some references to Microsoft XNA assemblies and some system assemblies. Now to start with, you can get rid of the gamer services. That's not used on PC, that's only Xbox. Well, it was on PC, but since they got rid of Games for Windows Live, it's not used. You can get rid of System Core, System Net, System XML, and System XML Link. I'm not even sure if you need mscorelib, but I'll leave it there. Now, you're going to need, you can get rid of all these usings. You're going to need some Total Miner assemblies as well. So let's just, so we'll save the solution, which will force it to disk, and then we'll find it here. XNA samples, my test mod, there it is there. So in there we have a solution file. That's just a settings file which it gets automatically generated. And then here we have the project, my test mod project, which has a project file, and it's got the class1.cs file there, and some output directories. Now, what's probably best for you to do is in here create a folder called libs, and we're going to copy the DLLs we need, the Studio Forge Total Miner DLLs, into here. So to do that, open up your Steam, go to your library. I'm just going to turn off the beta for now. Click Properties, go to Local Files, Browse Local Files, and this is where the game's binary files are. So you're going to need, you can sort by type, you're going to need all of these, not that one, so you need the Studio Forge XML files, which is the documentation. You don't need that one. Then TotalMiner API.dll, services, renderers. You don't need renderers, you don't need net. Integration GUI, you don't need graphics pipeline, you don't need graphics 3D, you don't need gamer services. I don't even think you need game, but we'll keep that anyway. So copy those, and actually we can close that, and copy them into your libs folder. So you have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 DLL files, assembly files, and 2 XML files. Now back in your project you're going to add those as references. So you right click on the references, add reference, browse, go to your libs folder and just add them all. Okay. Now to create a mod for TotalMiner, you need to implement a plugin provider. And this has, so you can right click on that and you can say implement interface. You can do explicit, I usually do explicit, and it generates these methods for you. Now we don't need the net the network plugin, so we can return null. We don't need the GUI plugin. We're not customizing blocks, so we can return null there. We're not creating an arcade game, so we can return there. And this is the general one, which is going to return your plugin. So your plugin is the program, which is the mod basically. So we're going to create. So we're going to create a class which will be your mod, and we'll call it my test mod plugin. And this we will just call my test mod plugin provider. I will rename this file to match that class name. Now we're going to add a new file here, new C# file, and we're going to call it my test mod plugin. And that's going to implement the ITM. We'll just copy those using statements. It's going to implement ITM plugin. Has various methods, most of which you won't actually need. For example, here we can return false. Here we don't have to do anything, don't have to do anything, don't do anything, don't do anything, don't do anything there, don't do anything there, don't do anything there. Don't do anything here. I like to organize these a bit better, so I put the handle input first, put the initializers first, put a region around that, visualization, then a region here for input, region for draw, I like to have the update methods above the draw, because update gets called before draw. That can go into initialization because it's like an unload. And these are just world events, which we won't be implementing. For this simple exercise. Now, we should be able to compile this. So we build the project. Okay, we've got an error here. So we just need the new statement there. Right, so that's compiled. So if we go to our folder, my test mod, there's a bin folder, x86, which is PC debug, because we are compiling debug mode. And there is your project library DLL, your assembly. It's also copied in these into here, but you don't actually need those. You'll see if you see it's got the there's documentation here that comes from these XML files. So it's very useful to have those. It explains the interfaces. Okay, so we've got the DLL, so we just need to now copy that one file. If we go to wherever our game is saving, it's usually in my documents, my game's Total Miner. This is the retail version of the file of the Total Miner game from Steam. This is where it saves all your maps and etc. And there you need to have a mods folder, which is going to have a folder for all the different mods you've got. And we'll call this, so we need to create a new folder for your mod. We'll call it my test mod. And then you just copy your DLL into there. Now when you run the game, in the active mods, you just click on that and it will list all those mods. Here's my test mod here. You activate that and start the game, and that will load your mod and apply anything necessary. So the mod's not actually doing anything at the moment. We will put some code in there to prove that it is actually doing something, that it is actually loading. So we go to our plugin. Now the update method, you can see here from the documentation, this method is called by the game once every frame. Use this method to add frame-based logic that is not dependent on a particular player. And then there's a second one here which is called every frame also for every player, local and remote. So if you want to do code specific for a player, every frame you put your code in there. I'm just going to do a simple notification So there's a game, when the game initializes your mod and it starts up a new game, it calls this method. So you can, and it passes you this interface, which has various methods and properties. So you can store a reference, a cache of reference to that in your class, so you can reuse it later. I like to put all my fields into a region, so we just put that there. And to store it, we just say this.game, which is this variable here, equals game, which is this variable here. Now we have a reference to this that we can use whenever we want to during the operation of the game. So here we can say game dot, which is referencing this variable here, game dot add notification, and just some text. So hello world, I am my test mod. Okay. Now we don't want to just leave it like that, because this gets called every frame, which is 60 times a second, 60 frames per second. So it will add this. It'll add 60 notifications every second, which is too many. It will just flood the screen. So we'll change it so it adds a new notification every second, every 1 second. Now there's 3 simple ways to do a timer. So we need a timer to do this. To do it every second we need a timer. There's 3 simple ways to do a timer. You can do a simple frame-based timer, which is just an integer. It's basically a frame counter. And you can say if frame counter, you can do this several ways. You can say if frame counter modulus 60, then you run this code. Okay, equals 0. So that means what that's going to do is every frame it's going to increment frame counter, and if the modulus of 60 is 0, which means every time it reaches a multiple of 60, it will add this notification. So that will be once every second, because it's running at 60 frames a second. So we can do that. Excuse me. We will just open up for the actual mod source as well. So we copy our recompiled DLL back into the mods folder of the retail version of the game. Run the game. And there it is, there's the modification every second. The notification, sorry. You'll notice update frame is not called while the pause menu is open. And it starts up again. So you can see there that the mod has been loaded and is running. Now there's 2 other ways to do a simple timer. You can use a float or a double precision floating point variable. And you can say, there's 2 ways to do it. You can say if, you can say timer minus equals, we need to just add a using statement here. Studio Forge dot engine, I think that's it. Services dot elapsed time. The game has this variable that global that you can use at any time, which is the amount of elapsed time since the last frame. So what we're doing here is we're subtracting the amount of elapsed time since the last frame from our timer, and then we say that's specified in seconds, which is actually fractions, because every frame is 60 times a second, 60 frames a second, so it'll be basically 1 divided by 60. And then we say if timer is less than or equal to 0, then we know that the amount of time has elapsed, whatever the timer was set to. We do the notification and then we reset the timer back to what we wanted. So if we say 1 here, that's in seconds, it's a second timer. So we set it back to 1, which means it will come back the next frame, decrement until it's back less than 0 again, which will be every second. So we can do that. Let's copy our DLL, new DLL, back to there, run the game again. My test mod. There you can see it's doing it every second again. Pikachu. So hopefully that shows you how to get a simple mod up and running, and then you just go from there and add in the code that you want. But that's all you need to get a mod started.